versus Scott Peterson. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Laci Denise Peterson.
You want to talk about the verdict first?
In December 2002, the quiet suburban town of Modesto, California, became the center of a haunting mystery. Laci Peterson, a 27-year-old woman full of life and expecting her first child, vanished on Christmas Eve. It was supposed to be a day of joy, filled with holiday preparations and excitement for the arrival of her unborn son, Connor. Instead, her family's world was turned upside down when she seemingly disappeared, without a trace. Laci was last seen that morning, according to her husband, Scott Peterson, who claimed she had gone out for a walk with their dog. Scott told police that he had spent the day fishing in the San Francisco Bay, and when he returned, Laci was gone. A neighbor had found their dog wandering with its leash still attached, but there was no sign of Laci. The community quickly mobilized. Flyers were printed, search parties formed, and the media swarmed, turning Laci's disappearance into a national story. Laci was much more than just a missing person. She was described by her family and friends as a warm, outgoing woman with a radiant smile, a devoted wife, and an eager mother-to-be. She had her whole future ahead of her, but as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. The mystery deepened when details about Scott Peterson's behavior started to emerge. While publicly pleading for his wife's safe return, Scott's actions behind closed doors were raising eyebrows. He seemed detached, unemotional, and evasive with law enforcement. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. In January 2003, a woman named Amber Fry stepped forward, revealing a devastating truth. She had been in a romantic relationship with Scott during the time Laci was missing, and she had no idea that he was married. Amber cooperated with investigators and provided recordings of phone calls between her and Scott, in which he continued to lie about his circumstances. In one call, recorded just days after Laci's disappearance, Scott told Amber he was spending his first Christmas without his wife, though Laci was still considered missing at the time. This bombshell not only changed the course of the investigation, but also the public perception of Scott Peterson. As the investigation continued, authorities began to zero in on Scott. His alibi, the fishing trip, was scrutinized, and soon, all roads led to one horrifying conclusion. In April 2003, the decomposed bodies of Laci and her unborn son, Connor, were found washed ashore in San Francisco Bay, near the area where Scott had claimed to be fishing. The discovery was a devastating blow, confirming what many had feared. Laci and her baby were dead, and foul play was suspected. Scott Peterson was arrested soon after the discovery and charged with 2 counts of murder. The trial that followed was one of the most sensational in recent history. Prosecutors painted Scott as a cold, calculating killer who wanted to escape the confines of his marriage and of impending fatherhood. They argued that Scott had murdered Laci, disposed of her body in the bay, and then concocted a story to cover his tracks. The defense, however, presented a different narrative, insisting that Scott was a victim of circumstance and that the real killer remained at large. But with the weight of the evidence, including his affair with Amber Fry and his suspicious behavior, the jury ultimately found him guilty. In 2005, Scott Peterson was sentenced to death. Yet, even after the verdict, many questions linger. What exactly happened to Laci Peterson? Was Scott truly the monster portrayed in court, or is there perhaps more to this story? The case continues to spark debate and intrigue, with some still questioning the conviction. Laci Peterson's story is a tragic reminder of the darkness that can hide behind the most seemingly perfect lives, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unimaginable loss. The quiet, hopeful life she was building for her family was brutally cut short, leaving those who loved her to seek justice in her memory. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Memento Mori Stories. I'm Ella Favela, your guide through the darker corners of human experience. If you're captivated by the mysteries of life, where coffee fuels your curiosity and tales of true crime send shivers down your spine, you've found your place. Whether you're a returning listener or you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm excited to have you with us. So find a cozy spot and let's dive into a spine-tingling tale. Before we go any further, if you thrive on stories that challenge your perception and keep you on edge, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I release new content every 2 weeks, and I'd be honored to have you join us in the shadows. If you're intrigued by what happens behind the scenes of my life, make sure to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. I've always got something exciting brewing, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. You'll find all of the links conveniently displayed on the screen, and they're clickable in the description box below. Before we continue, I must warn you, today's episode covers deeply impactful and sensitive topics which may evoke strong emotions in my listeners. These aren't just stories. They're real-life events that have had profound effects on individuals and communities. Please be advised, this channel is not intended for minors. This episode will include graphic content and in-depth discussions on domestic abuse, violence against women, assault, and murder. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Given the intensity of these themes, it's essential to take care of your mental and emotional well-being. We believe in the importance of openly discussing these issues in order to foster understanding and empathy, but we also recognize the potential to create distress. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, or if any of these topics resonate too closely with your own experiences, it is more than okay to take a step back and skip this episode. Your mental and emotional health is my top priority, and it's crucial that you honor your own needs and boundaries. As we explore these stories, remember that our aim is not to sensationalize the pain. Rather, it is to honor the victims and to shed light on the realities they endured. We want to create a space where these difficult conversations can lead to greater awareness and ultimately to change. By understanding the darker aspects of human behavior, we hope to contribute to the broader dialogue on prevention and support for those affected by such violence. If you or somebody that you know is dealing with these issues or carrying the weight of past trauma, please know that you are not alone. There are resources and support systems available to help you. We've included a list of links and contacts in the description below that may offer you some assistance. Whether you seek support from a professional, talk to a trusted confidant, or simply take a break from these heavy topics, there are pathways to your healing. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let's approach these stories with the compassion and respect they deserve. And let's strive to learn from them in ways that promote understanding and healing. Now, grab your cup of coffee and settle in as we dive into the tragic and haunting tale of Laci Peterson. Laci Rocha was a woman whose life was defined by her warmth, ambition, and deep love for those around her. Born on May 4th, 1975, in Modesto, California, she grew up on her family's farm in Escalon, a small town just outside of Modesto. Raised in a close-knit household, Laci was the daughter of Sharon and Dennis Rocha. From an early age, her kind heart and infectious smile left an impression on everyone she met. She was known for putting others first, and her friendly, easygoing personality made her beloved by family, friends, and neighbors alike. Growing up in a farming community, Laci developed a strong connection to nature. Surrounded by animals and farmland, she found great joy in the simplicity of the outdoors. Her love for gardening blossomed early, and she took great pride in caring for the plants around her. This passion for nurturing life would remain with her into adulthood, influencing her future dreams and goals. Gardening wasn't just a hobby. It was a way for Laci to find peace, connect with nature, and bring beauty into the lives of those that she loved. Laci's academic drive and ambition were evident as she moved through her teenage years. At Thomas Downey High School in Modesto, she excelled as a student, engaging in extracurricular activities and cultivating friendships that would last a lifetime. Always eager to learn, she was a young woman who embraced every new challenge with enthusiasm and dedication. Her hard work and determination would lead her to California Polytechnic State University, or Cal Poly, where she majored in ornamental horticulture. It was a perfect fit for her, a chance to combine her love of nature with a career in landscaping and floral design. During her time at Cal Poly, Laci balanced her studies with part-time work while maintaining close connections with her family and her friends. Her vibrant spirit drew people to her, and she became known for her generosity and her loyalty. Whether it was lending a hand when someone was in need or in offering comfort during difficult times, Laci was always there for the people in her life. Her dedication to others defined who she was, a woman full of life, love, and an unshakable commitment to her family and her friends. Scott Peterson was a man with a promising future and a seemingly steady path ahead of him. Born on October 24, 1972, in San Diego, California, he grew up in a middle-class family. His parents, Lee and Jackie Peterson, worked hard to provide a supportive and structured environment for Scott and his siblings. As the youngest child, Scott was often the center of attention, and from a young age, his charm and intelligence stood out. Those who knew him described him as a handsome, polite boy with an easy confidence that came naturally to him. These qualities would later play a significant role in shaping how others would perceive him. Athletics played a central part in Scott's early life, particularly golf. His father shared this passion, and together, they spent countless hours on the golf course, bonding over the game. By high school, golf became a defining feature of Scott's identity. He excelled at the sport, quickly becoming one of the top players on his high school team. His talent and hard work paid off when he earned a partial scholarship to Arizona State University, one of the top golf programs in the country. At this point, Scott harbored serious dreams of turning professional and making a name for himself in the competitive world of golf. However, Scott's time at Arizona State was short-lived. The intense competition and pressure to perform took a toll on him, and he soon realized that achieving his dream of becoming a professional golfer may not be as realistic as he once believed. Struggling to maintain his spot amongst the best players, his aspirations began to shift. He left Arizona State and transferred to Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo, California, where he decided to refocus on academics and explore a new direction for his life. After a period of adjustment, Scott transferred again, this time to California Polytechnic State University, where he majored in agricultural business. This field appealed to him due to its stability and connection to his family business background. At Cal Poly, Scott's charm and confidence helped him to thrive socially, and he became known for his easygoing nature. His ambition remained intact, though now his focus had shifted towards building a career in business. During his time at Cal Poly, Scott worked part-time jobs and maintained a wide social circle. His good looks and personable demeanor made him popular with his peers. Before meeting Laci Rocha, Scott was a young man poised for success, ambitious, and eager to carve out a future that seemed full of promise. Laci and Scott Peterson's story would begin in the mid-1990s when fate brought them together. Both were students at Cal Poly, although their paths hadn't crossed until a chance encounter at a local restaurant where Scott was working as a waiter. Laci, who was studying ornamental horticulture, was immediately drawn to his good looks and calm demeanor. Boldly, she made the first move by leaving her phone number after dining there. That small gesture would mark the beginning of a whirlwind romance. Laci was known for her lively, friendly nature, always brimming with energy and warmth. Her friends would often remark how smitten she was with Scott from the very start, frequently gushing about him to those close to her. She believed that she had found someone she could build a future with, someone who matched her ambitions and her dreams. Scott, on the other hand, was quieter and more reserved, but equally captivated by Laci's vibrant personality. Together, they seemed to be the perfect match. Laci's outgoing spirit balancing Scott's calm and composed nature. They became inseparable almost immediately. Their relationship progressed quickly. Laci often spent time at Scott's apartment, cooking meals and taking care of him, reflecting her nurturing side. She was someone who found joy in caring for those she loved, and Scott's steady presence gave her a sense of security and stability. They grew closer as they balanced their academic responsibilities and built their relationship, solidifying the bond between them. After dating for a couple of years, the relationship would become more serious. In 1997, they decided to move in together, marking the next step in their commitment. That same year, Scott proposed to Laci, and she enthusiastically said yes. The engagement brought excitement and joy to both of their families, especially Laci's parents, who adored Scott and believed that he would be a devoted and loving husband. In August 1997, the couple married in a beautiful ceremony that symbolized the beginning of what Laci hoped would be a lifetime of happiness. In the early years of their marriage, the couple settled into life in Modesto. Laci embraced her role as a homemaker, tending to their home and garden, while Scott began building a career in fertilizer sales. To their friends and family, they seemed like the perfect couple. Young, ambitious, and ready for a bright future together.
How can I help you?
Yes, my daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leaf shock.
What is your name?
My name is Ron. Her husband, Scott Peterson, is on way over the park.
What's your daughter's name?
Laci Peterson.
As the years progressed, Scott Peterson's career flourished, allowing the couple to move into an elegant home in an upscale neighborhood. Laci's passion for gardening continued to thrive, and she devoted herself to maintaining their yard and their home with the same zeal that had always defined her. Socially, the Petersons were well regarded, embodying the image of a perfect couple. Laci's cheerful and outgoing personality won her admiration from neighbors and friends alike, while Scott's composed demeanor and quiet confidence made him equally respected. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, subtle tensions were beginning to emerge. Laci had always envisioned a future filled with children, and as their marriage progressed, her desire to start a family became a focal point of their relationship. She spoke frequently about her dreams of motherhood, sharing her excitement with friends and family as she eagerly anticipated expanding their family. Her enthusiasm was palpable, and she immersed herself in preparing for this new chapter in their lives. Scott, while outwardly supportive, did not share Laci's level of enthusiasm. His reactions to the prospect of fatherhood seemed reserved and detached. As his career demands increased, he appeared more and more preoccupied and less engaged with Laci's excitement. This growing disparity in their attitudes towards starting a family began to create an undercurrent of tension between them. Although Laci's optimism helped to mask these brewing issues, those closest to her noticed Scott's growing distance and the subtle strain that it was placing on their relationship. In 2002, after 5 years of marriage, Laci's long-held dreams of becoming a mother would come true when she fell pregnant. The news was a source of immense joy for her, and she enthusiastically began preparing for the new baby's arrival. Laci devoted herself to planning the nursery, selecting names, and imagining the future with their son, whom they planned to name Connor. To friends and family, the Petersons seemed to be on the brink of a joyous new chapter, with parenthood just around the corner. Yet, as Laci's happiness grew, Scott's behavior would become increasingly aloof. His growing detachment contrasted sharply with Laci's boundless excitement and dedication to their future. The idyllic image of their life together began to crack, signaling that their relationship was facing deeper complexities. Unbeknownst to Laci, the promising future she had envisioned was beginning to unravel, with focus on the impending arrival of their child masking the emerging challenges in their marriage. On the evening of December 23, 2002, Laci and Scott would spend a routine evening in Modesto. At 5:45 p.m., the couple visited Salon, where Laci's sister, Amy Rocha, worked. Amy had been cutting Scott's hair regularly, and that evening was no exception. Following the appointment, Scott offered to pick up a fruit basket that Amy had ordered, as he planned to play golf the next day at a nearby course. Scott's plan to golf on Christmas Eve was something he mentioned to others, including Amy, reinforcing his commitment to the game. Later that night, around 8:30 p.m., Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, spoke with her daughter on the phone. Laci appeared to be in good spirits, discussing her plans for the next day. Those who spoke to Laci prior to her disappearance included Amy, Sharon, and Scott, who were the last known individuals to have had contact with her. Scott Peterson later told the police that he last saw Laci at approximately 9:30 a.m. on December 24th, when he left their home to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina. He claimed that Laci was watching Martha Stewart on the television, an episode about meringue, and was preparing to mop the floor, bake cookies, and take their golden retriever, Mackenzie, to a nearby park. Karen Service, a neighbor, reported finding Mackenzie alone outside the Peterson home around 10:18 a.m. She returned the dog to the backyard, where he was later seen by another neighbor, Mike Chiavetta, around 10:45 a.m. Chiavetta noted that Mackenzie was with a muddy leash. An unnamed female neighbor also reported seeing the dog wandering the neighborhood, but didn't find anything out of the ordinary. At 2:15 p.m., Scott left a voicemail for Laci, saying, "Hey beautiful, it's 2:15. I'm leaving Berkeley." When Scott returned home that afternoon, he claimed that Laci's car was in the driveway, but the house was empty. He also mentioned finding Mackenzie in the backyard and reported this to Laci's mother, Sharon. However, Sharon later disputed Scott's account in her book, claiming that she was unaware of Laci's disappearance until Scott's call. Scott had showered and changed his clothes before returning home. A neighbor testified that Scott knocked on his door asking if he had seen Laci. The neighbor and his wife overheard Scott mention that he had been going golfing and had tried to call Laci. When friends and family gathered at the Peterson home later that night, Scott repeated that he had been out playing golf. Scott contacted Sharon Rocha to inquire if Laci was with her, leading Sharon to realize that Laci was missing. Both Scott and Laci's stepfather reported her missing to the police shortly before 6 p.m. Laci, who was now 7.5 months pregnant with a due date of February 10, 2003, became the immediate focus of an intense nationwide search as the case quickly garnered widespread attention. On December 24, 2002, Modesto police detectives Alan Brocchini and John Bueller responded to the missing person report of Laci Peterson. Upon arriving at the Peterson home, the detectives conducted an initial interview with Scott and performed a cursory search of the residence. Scott claimed that he had been fishing for sturgeon at the Berkeley Marina, located approximately 90 miles from their Modesto home. During their search of the house, the detectives discovered Laci's keys, wallet, sunglasses, and purse in a closet, items that were notably absent from her usual belongings. In response to Laci's disappearance, a large-scale search operation was quickly mobilized. On December 25, 2002, over 900 family members, friends, and neighbors would join forces to search the area surrounding the Peterson home. They distributed missing person flyers and conducted extensive neighborhood searches. Detective Brocchini, at a press conference, would emphasize that it was entirely out of character for Laci to leave without notifying her family, underscoring the gravity of the situation. The search efforts involved more than 30 Modesto police officers and firefighters who used various methods including foot patrols, horseback, bicycles, and watercraft. Canine units and searchlight-equipped helicopters were also used to comb Dry Creek and its surroundings. The case quickly gained nationwide media attention, and a reward for information leading to Laci's safe return was initially set at $25,000. This amount was later increased to $250,000 and eventually to $500,000. In addition to traditional search methods, blue and yellow ribbons, flyers, and a website, LaciPeterson.com, were used to spread awareness. A command center was established at the Red Lion Hotel, where volunteers would manage phone calls, record developments, and circulate information. Over 1,500 volunteers would play a crucial role in these search efforts, manning the command center and organizing candlelight vigils with Scott Peterson for Laci. Although detectives did not initially view the case as suspicious, their suspicion would grow as they dove deeper into the investigation. Detective Bueller noted his initial unease with Scott's demeanor, describing him as calm but distant, with an unsettling mix of being polite and arrogant. Bueller observed that Scott's behavior was inconsistent with that of someone deeply disturbed by the disappearance of their wife. The media coverage of this case would lead to several tips and potential sightings. One significant lead came from Amber Frey, a woman who contacted detectives on December 30th, 2002. She revealed that she had met Scott on November 20th, and that he had said he was single. Frey also disclosed that Scott had told her he was a widower on December 9th, stating that this Christmas would be his first without his wife. This information led detectives to believe that Scott may have been planning to kill Laci as early as 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. To gather more evidence, detectives equipped Amber with a recording device to capture conversations with Scott. On January 15, 2003, Laci's immediate family was informed of Scott's affair with Frey. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, expressed her belief that Scott was involved in Laci's disappearance. On January 24th, the Rocha family held a press conference where Brent Rocha revealed that Scott had admitted to an affair with a woman in Fresno. The Rocha family also announced their withdrawal of support for Scott due to his lack of cooperation with both the family and the police. Later that day, Amber Frey held her own press conference to explain her involvement in the investigation, further intensifying the scrutiny on Scott Peterson. On April 13, 2003, a grim discovery was made at the Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park in Richmond, California. While walking their dog along the tidal flats, 2 individuals stumbled upon the body of a male fetus. The following day, another shocking find occurred. A jogger spotted a human torso in the riffraff along the same shoreline, approximately 1 mile from where the fetus was discovered. The bodies were subsequently identified through DNA testing on April 18, 2003. The forensic analysis confirmed that the remains were those of Laci Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. The autopsies were conducted by forensic pathologist Dr. Brian Peterson, no relation to Scott Peterson, although the results were initially sealed by a court order. However, an anonymous source from the Associated Press would later disclose some disturbing details. It was revealed that Connor's body exhibited minor decomposition and was found with mutilations on its right side. Additionally, a length of nylon cord was discovered wrapped around his body, although the source of these injuries and how the cord became entangled remain inconclusive. Laci's remains, on the other hand, were severely decomposed and missing crucial parts: her head, arms, most of her legs, and internal organs. The autopsy uncovered 2 cracked ribs on Laci's torso, although her uterus and cervix were found to be intact. The condition of her body suggested that it had been weighed at the wrists and ankles and submerged in seawater for several months. Forensic experts testified that Laci's disarticulation and the missing organs were consistent with prolonged exposure to water. The exact time of her death and whether the broken ribs had occurred pre- or post-mortem could not be definitively determined. Dr. Peterson concluded that Connor had died in utero and was expelled from Laci's decomposing body. This tragic revelation underscored the profound loss and violence surrounding Laci Peterson's case. The grim discovery of Laci and Connor Peterson's bodies marked a pivotal shift in the investigation, transforming it from a missing persons case into a full-fledged homicide investigation. With the bodies now identified and the cause of death indicating foul play, detectives intensified their scrutiny of Scott, who had become the primary suspect in the case. The FBI and Modesto police departments would launch a comprehensive forensic examination of the Peterson home. In a key breakthrough, mitochondrial DNA testing linked a hair wrapped around a pair of pliers found in Scott's fishing boat to hairs recovered from Laci's hairbrush. This connection provided crucial evidence in placing Laci's hair in close proximity to Scott's fishing boat. Further investigation uncovered more troubling evidence. Police searched Scott's truck, toolbox, and warehouse, where they discovered a homemade concrete anchor in the boat that Scott had purchased just 2 weeks before Laci's disappearance. Scott initially claimed he used a 90-pound bag of concrete to make one anchor and used the remainder to repair his driveway. However, Detective Henry Hendy's search on December 27th would reveal cement powder on the boat trailer and 5 circular marks that matched the size and shape of the bucket used for making the anchor. Additionally, a sledgehammer and a dustpan covered in cement powder were also found in the warehouse. Prosecutors contended that Scott had created 5 anchors, using 4 to weigh down Laci's body by tying them to her wrists and ankles, thus ensuring she would sink in the San Francisco Bay. Despite extensive searches of the bay for these anchors, none were ever found. As the investigation progressed, Detectives Brocchini and Bueller used a GPS locator to track Scott's movements. The technology revealed that Scott had traveled to San Diego, raising concerns that he may be attempting to flee to Mexico. The detectives immediately began electronic surveillance of Scott's activities, but soon discovered that he had switched vehicles, rendering the GPS locator ineffective and complicating their efforts to monitor his whereabouts. This development added a new layer of urgency and complexity to the case, as law enforcement sought to apprehend Scott and find justice for Laci and Connor. As Scott Peterson's movements became increasingly suspicious, police heightened their surveillance, tracking his car and intercepting his cell phone calls. Their concern intensified when Peterson switched vehicles and was discovered to be less than 30 miles from the Mexican border. Detectives, including Brocchini, were convinced that Peterson was attempting to flee to Mexico. In a 2017 interview, Brocchini remarked,
"We've got to find Scott right now. He told me he was at Brooks Island, and that's where the bodies come up. I believe it was premeditated. He planned it. San Diego was pretty darn close to the Mexican border, and Scott knew the area pretty well. That's where his parents lived. That's where he lived. So it wasn't like he was going to have to get on MapQuest to figure out a way to get to Tijuana."
On April 18, 2003, police apprehended Peterson at the Torrey Pines golf course in La Jolla, California, where he was scheduled to meet his father and brother for a game of golf. Peterson, who had dyed his hair and beard blonde, was found with his vehicle packed with items indicative of a planned escape: nearly $15,000 in cash, Viagra tablets, camping and survival gear, multiple changes of clothes, 4 cell phones, and 2 driver's licenses, his own and his brother's. Lee Peterson, Scott's father, explained that Scott used his brother's license to secure a discount at the golf course and had been living out of his car to avoid media scrutiny. However, police and prosecutors argued that the disguise, the large sum of money, and other items were clear indicators of Peterson's intent to flee. Detectives Brocchini and Bueller transported Peterson back to Modesto, where he was booked into the Stanislaus County Jail. On April 21, 2003, Peterson faced arraignment in Stanislaus County Superior Court on 2 felony counts of murder with premeditation and special circumstances, to which he pled not guilty. Due to the high-profile nature of the case, which had attracted substantial media attention and community involvement, Judge Al Girolami decided to move the trial to San Mateo County. This decision aimed to mitigate potential juror bias and to ensure a fair trial for Scott. Before his arraignment, Scott Peterson was initially represented by Kirk McAllister, a seasoned criminal defense attorney from Modesto, alongside Chief Deputy Public Defender Kent Faulkner. As the case progressed, Peterson indicated that he could afford to hire a high-profile private attorney, Mark Garagos. Garagos, recognized for his previous high-profile cases, took over Peterson's defense, signaling a shift in strategy as the trial approached.
Right now, 8 o'clock, and we begin this hour with a holiday mystery in the Central Valley. An intense search is underway for a missing Modesto woman who is 8 months pregnant. She vanished on Christmas Eve. KTVU Channel 2 reporter Ted Rollins joins us with a live report now from Modesto. Ted?
Tori and Mark, this is a real mystery. Friends and family of this young woman, Laci Peterson, are gathering at the family home. You can see that they've been putting up fires in the neighborhood here for the last day and a half. They've also been canvassing a park which is nearby this area where Laci was last seen on Christmas Eve about 9:30 in the morning. Her husband, Scott, had gone to the Bay Area to go fishing. When he returned, Laci was nowhere to be found.
The trial began on June 1, 2004, and would immediately draw extensive media coverage. The lead prosecutor, Rick DiStasso, presented the case against Peterson, while Mark Garagos led the defense. The prosecution's case was bolstered by the testimony of Amber Frey, who had retained attorney Gloria Allred to represent her interests during the trial. On June 23, 2004, Judge Alfred DeLucci dismissed one of the jurors after spending 2 hours questioning each juror behind closed doors. The dismissed juror had been recorded on video discussing the case with Laci's brother, Brent Rocha, which raised concerns about impartiality. Although Judge DeLucci had previously deemed the interaction as not warranting dismissal, further scrutiny revealed that the juror had discussed the case with others, leading to his removal. DeLucci cautioned the remaining jurors to avoid media coverage of the trial to prevent external influence. In their opening statements, the prosecution argued that Scott Peterson had murdered his wife due to his affair with Amber Frey. They detailed Peterson's behavior surrounding Laci's disappearance, including his conflicting statements about golfing and his queries to police about the use of cadaver dogs in a park where Laci had reportedly walked their dog. The prosecution aimed to paint Peterson as a man driven by infidelity to commit murder. The defense, led by Garagos, acknowledged Scott's affair but contested the prosecution's theory that he would abandon his life for a brief relationship with Frey. Garagos criticized the police's handling of the case, particularly their dismissal of Scott's claim that Laci had been watching a Martha Stewart segment on Meringue, despite evidence which proved that the segment did in fact feature meringue baking. Garagos also pointed out the lack of direct forensic evidence linking Peterson to the crime, dismissing a hair found in Scott's boat as potentially left there by Laci during a previous visit. In the trial of Scott Peterson, the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence to build their case, focusing on Scott's behavior and the context of his actions surrounding Laci's disappearance. With no direct evidence linking Scott to the crime, the prosecution argued that he had multiple motives for murdering his wife: dissatisfaction with his marriage, the pressure of pregnancy, the desire to continue his affair with Amber Fry, and mounting financial difficulties. They alleged that Peterson used cement anchors to weight Laci's body down in the San Francisco Bay. Witnesses presented by the prosecution highlighted inconsistencies in Scott's behavior. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, testified that Scott was unresponsive when she tried to reach out to him at East La Loma Park, and that he had avoided attending a candlelight vigil held for Laci. Other relatives noted his lack of visible emotion and inconsistencies in his statements about being golfing instead of fishing. Testimonies revealed that Scott had made various suspicious changes after Laci's disappearance, such as altering his appearance, using his mother's name to purchase a vehicle, and adding pornographic channels to his cable service. Additionally, a realtor testified that Scott had expressed a desire to sell their home, claiming he didn't want Laci to live in it if she were found alive, while a car salesman would also note that Scott had traded in Laci's Land Rover for a brand new truck. Amber's testimony and secretly recorded conversations between her and Scott would provide further evidence of his deceit. In one recording, Peterson falsely claimed to be in Paris after Laci's disappearance. The prosecution also presented evidence of Scott's financial strain, citing an auditor's report of significant credit card debt, although the defense argued that Peterson had been timely with his bill payments and had considerable credit available. Forensic evidence played a critical role in the prosecution's case. A hair found on Scott's boat was matched to Laci's hairbrush through mitochondrial DNA, suggesting that Laci had been on the boat, potentially after her death. The defense challenged the reliability of mitochondrial DNA testing, arguing that it was not universally accepted and contending that Laci had visited the boat before her disappearance. Despite the lack of anchors found during searches of the San Francisco Bay, the prosecution argued that the environment would make detection difficult, as detailed by Jeffrey Baer, who noted the challenges of locating objects in the bay's conditions. The prosecution also brought in hydrologist Rick Chang to suggest that Laci's body might have been dumped near Scott's fishing location. Chang admitted that his findings were not precise, however, they were probable. The defense contested the thoroughness of the investigation and pointed out several lapses, including the failure to check an alibi of a potential suspect and issues with evidence collection, such as malfunctioning recording equipment. In addition to questioning the investigation's thoroughness, the defense proposed an alternative theory, that Laci had been kidnapped, held until she gave birth, and then her body, along with Connor's, were dumped in the bay. The prosecution's medical experts countered this theory, asserting that Connor's body was not full-term and had died simultaneously with Laci. Dr. Charles March, expected to support the defense's theory, would face criticism for his reliance on a friend's reports and for errors in his findings, which weakened his testimony. During the deliberations in Scott Peterson's trial, the proceedings encountered significant disruption. One juror was dismissed for misconduct after she conducted independent research on the case, therefore violating the court's strict instructions to rely solely on evidence presented during the trial. The jury foreman, an attorney, also requested his removal, citing possible threats and disagreements with fellow jurors who sought his replacement. His request would lead to replacement by an alternate. On November 12, 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of 2 counts of murder: first-degree murder with special circumstances for the death of his wife, Laci, and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. The penalty phase of the trial began on November 30th and concluded on December 13th, with the jury recommending the death penalty. On March 16, 2005, Judge Alfred DeLucci sentenced Scott Peterson to death by lethal injection and ordered him to pay $10,000 towards the cost of Laci's funeral. Judge DeLucci would describe the murder as, quote, cruel, uncaring, heartless, and callous, emphasizing the heinous nature of the crime. Following the conviction, several jurors commented on how Peterson's demeanor and behavior contributed to their verdict. Juror number 1, Greg Beraltis, along with 2 other jurors, stated that Peterson's lack of emotion, as well as his misleading phone calls to Amber Frey after Laci's disappearance, were critical factors in their decision-making. They described the verdict as being based on, quote, hundreds of small puzzle pieces of circumstantial evidence, which collectively painted a damning picture of Scott's guilt. In addition to his criminal convictions, Peterson faced financial repercussions. On October 21, 2005, a judge ruled that the $250,000 life insurance policy Scott had taken out on Laci would be awarded to Laci's mother, a decision later upheld by the 5th District Court of Appeal on October 31, 2007. Scott Peterson arrived at San Quentin State Prison on March 17, 2005. Reports indicated that he had not slept the night before his arrival, being too, quote, jazzed to rest. He joined over 700 other inmates in California's sole death row facility, where he remained during the appeals process.
Several televised interviews in 2003, Scott Peterson is talking publicly about the case. He proclaims his innocence in a newly released phone call that his sister-in-law recorded in June for a new A&E program called The Murder of Laci Peterson, airing on Tuesday nights. Speaking from death row at San Quentin Prison, Scott says lots of people saw his wife the day she vanished, and investigators dropped the ball.
I wasn't the last one to see Laci that day. There were so many witnesses who saw her walk in the neighborhood after I left. The cops just never followed up on the burglar across the street. The police failed to find my family.
And in 2004, when the jury found him guilty, Scott says he was shocked.
And I just had this weird sensation that I was falling forward and down, and there was going to be no end to this falling forward and down, like there was no floor to land on. I was staggered by it. I had no idea it was coming.
Scott Peterson's automatic appeal of his death sentence was filed with the Supreme Court of California on July 5, 2012. His attorney, Cliff Gardner, submitted a comprehensive 423-page brief arguing that the intense media coverage, incorrect evidentiary rulings, and other legal missteps had denied Peterson a fair trial. The State Attorney General's office responded on January 26, 2015. In a counter to the state's brief, Peterson's defense in July 2015 highlighted issues with a certified dog that had detected Laci's scent at the Berkeley Marina, but had failed 2/3 of similar tests. In June 2020, the California Supreme Court heard arguments on Peterson's direct appeal. The defense contended that there were multiple procedural errors: improper dismissal of prospective jurors, allowing 2 jurors onto Peterson's boat, improper prosecution presence during defense testing, and inadequate change of venue despite evidence of juror bias. The prosecution argued that the appeal should only overturn the verdict if a prospective juror's dismissal was proven unfair, asserting that there was no credible claim that the 12 jurors were partial. On August 24, 2020, the California Supreme Court upheld Peterson's conviction, however, overturned his death sentence. The court found that the trial judge had improperly excluded jurors who had opposed the death penalty without determining their ability to fairly consider it. Justice Leandra Kruger emphasized that jurors cannot be dismissed solely for their opposition to capital punishment and must be evaluated on their ability to impartially weigh the death penalty according to their oath. Initially, prosecutors considered retrying the penalty phase, but decided against it in June 2021. On September 22, 2021, Judge Anne-Christine Masulo ruled that Peterson would be resentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On December 8th of that year, Masulo formally resentenced Peterson to life in prison without parole for the first-degree murder of Laci, and a concurrent 15 years to life for the second-degree murder of Connor. In October 2022, Peterson was transferred from San Quentin State Prison to Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. In November 2015, Scott Peterson filed a habeas corpus petition, seeking relief on grounds beyond those addressed in his direct appeal. This petition allowed for the introduction of new evidence, and Scott argued that the trial had been marred by several issues. Among his claims were that a juror had lied on her jury application, and that there was evidence suggesting that neighbors saw Laci alive after Scott left home. On August 10, 2017, the State Attorney General responded with a 150-page brief, arguing that the habeas petition disregarded overwhelming evidence of Scott's guilt. Donna Provenzano, supervising Deputy Attorney General, dismissed the alleged sightings of Laci as numerous but unreliable, citing 74 reported sightings across various states and even internationally, most of which she claimed were unverified. In August 2018, Scott's legal team countered with a reply that focused on 6 claims of deficient performance by his trial attorney, Mark Garagos. They would criticize Garagos for failing to call key experts on fetal growth, dog scent evidence, and the movement of bodies in water, as well as for promising to call witnesses but not following through, and for mishandling burglary evidence. In October 2020, the California Supreme Court issued a show cause order, directing the lower court to address the issue of juror misconduct raised in the habeas petition. On December 20th, 2022, Judge Anne-Christine Masulo would deny Scott's habeas petition. She addressed the claim that juror number 7 had concealed a history of domestic abuse during jury selection, which Scott's team argued had tainted the jury. Masulo found no evidence that the juror had intentionally misled the court or had harbored improper bias. The judge concluded that any discrepancies were due to a misunderstanding of the questions and not of intentional deceit. Notably, Scott would retain the option to appeal this ruling. The Los Angeles Innocence Project has recently taken on Scott Peterson's case, aiming to uncover new evidence that could potentially prove his innocence. Peterson, convicted in 2004 of murdering his 27-year-old wife, Laci, is receiving renewed attention from this nonprofit organization dedicated to helping those who are wrongfully convicted. Laci Peterson was 8 months pregnant when she disappeared on Christmas Eve 2002, with her body found 4 months later in the Pacific Ocean. The prosecution argued that Peterson had killed Laci and disposed of her body, while the defense claimed that Laci was the victim of a burglary. Peterson was found guilty and sentenced to death in 2005. However, in 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence due to issues with juror dismissal, leading to a resentencing in 2021 to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Innocence Project's recent court filings highlight their investigation into Peterson's claims of innocence, focusing on potential juror misconduct and new evidence that may have emerged since the trial. The organization has requested access to video interviews related to a burglary that occurred across the street from the Peterson home around the time of Laci's disappearance. This burglary may have involved a suspect who reportedly was seen by Laci. Additionally, Peterson's legal team seeks to conduct DNA tests on bloodstains found on a mattress in a van near the burglary site, and to follow up on reports of a witness seeing a pregnant woman resembling Laci in distress. Janie Peterson, an advocate for Scott, expresses hope that these efforts could either lead to a new trial or resolve the case with Scott's release. The untimely passing of Laci and Connor Peterson would spur significant legislative change with the passage of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, also known as Laci and Connor's Law. Signed into law by President George W. Bush on April 1, 2004, this federal law was enacted partly due to the high-profile nature of the Peterson case, where Laci, 8 months pregnant, was murdered. The act establishes that under federal law, if a person causes the death or injury of an unborn child during the commission of a crime against a pregnant woman, they will face separate criminal charges for the harm inflicted on the fetus. This legal framework recognizes unborn children as victims in their own right, distinct from the harm done to the pregnant woman. The law underscores the recognition of fetal life in contexts involving violent crimes, reflecting the gravity of such crimes, which impact both the mother and her unborn child. Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, and her husband, Ron Gransky, attended the White House ceremony marking the law's signing, symbolizing the personal impact of the legislation. The Unborn Victims of Violence Act represents a significant legal acknowledgement of the dual victims in cases of violence against pregnant women. Laci's legacy extends well beyond her own tragic fate. It has influenced how the law addresses crimes involving pregnant women, highlighting the need for legal protection and recognition of fetal life in criminal context. Her case remains a poignant reminder of the need for vigilance in protecting the vulnerable and ensuring that justice is both served and continually scrutinized. Her name was Laci Peterson, and this is her story. It is my honor and my privilege to place her where she belongs, directly at the center of this narrative, never to be forgotten. The painting I've been working on today is called In the Shadows, and as of the time of recording this voiceover, about 9:30 p.m. on September 9th, 2024, I've once again only just begun. As of this very moment, I've only completed the digital design and a little teeny tiny bit of the line work, so I have no idea how long this painting will take me, but I'm into it about 13 hours at this point, and I'll put the total elapsed time on the screen right now for anybody who's curious. It's 9 by 12 inches and will be composed of some combination of watercolor and gouache paints, Posca pen, India ink, and gilding foils on 300 GSM 140-pound cold-pressed block. This piece is a gift for my dear friend Jackie, so it won't be available for sale. However, many of my other original works are available, and my books are currently open to custom-commissioned work as well. I ship for free across Canada, but I'm happy to ship globally for a nominal fee. If any of this sounds interesting to you, please send me an email to hello@stageleftproject.ca. If you believe in the power of conversation, in dismantling the silence that shrouds domestic abuse, and in fostering empathy, then I invite you to be a part of the Memento Mori Stories community. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay engaged with thought-provoking stories, discussions, and creative expressions. Together, we can be a force for awareness, understanding, and healing. Your subscription is not just a click. It's a pledge to be a part of a movement which embraces the power of storytelling to bring forth positive change. Remember, every voice matters, and yours can be a catalyst for good. Subscribe, share, and let's continue this journey together. Remember, one day you will die, but for now, live well. Ciao for now.